Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Approachable Agent. Today I wanted to answer a question that came in via one of the other videos that I've got up here, and it's really about the agent process. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I can only answer to my personal process and what I was trained to do. Of course, as there are however many agents, I'm sure that there are going to be deviations. But in essence, what you need to know is that the entire process is really about relationships. So whether you are a New York-based agent or an agent in another country, maybe you're in the UK, in London, maybe you are still in the US but in another state, or maybe like me in Australia, that we generally all have a similar process, and relationships are what makes the world go round. So of course, if you have a relationship with a publisher, it might make it a little bit easier to get a manuscript read. That said, the question is multi-part, so you'll forgive me. I've actually got it up here so that I don't forget anything. So initially it was, how do literary agents pitch to publishers, and the process generally on the agent's end. So this is where I will describe when I have got a manuscript from one of my writers. Oftentimes, if I haven't already identified a publisher that would be interested, either because I know they're specifically looking for a specific genre, or I know what their taste is, now I might actually ring them on the phone and say, hey, I've got a manuscript that I think might really fit you. Here's the basic premise. Would you love to read the full? And they can answer. Sometimes, and especially these days, emails are very easy as well. And so whether I'm thinking of them individually or not, I might send a query email. If I know them, of course, it's very friendly. And again, I just say, one of my authors has a manuscript that I thought is one that you might really be interested in. Here's the basic premise. Would you like me to send through the full? Of course, it also happens that even after I've sent those out, it may be that it's not a good fit for one of the publishers that I have a personal relationship with yet. And so I might reach out to a publisher that maybe I haven't met yet. They might be in another location or whatever. And that certainly doesn't stop me. What I do is I put together a query that is similar to the query that we would ask you to put together, whether you were approaching a publisher direct or a literary agent, and just reach out and say, this is who I am, this is what I've got, based on what I've seen them acquire in the past and all different sorts of things, anything personal that I might know about their imprint or their publisher or that individual, I might put that in there, and then I will simply send them the synopsis and ask if they would be interested in seeing the full. That is the very first step always. If I can make it more personal, I do, but it just sort of goes down the line in concentric circles based on the relationship that I have with them. The next question is kind of related. Does the agent call the publisher before email? As I said, maybe, but maybe not. And that's okay. That really depends on whether or not this is a first introduction or multiple, or maybe I just know their schedule and I know that it's easier for me if I just email them and then follow that up with a phone call or a follow-up email. Does it depend on whether they have a relationship or not? I think I answered that. How long do agents typically wait before they hear back from a publisher? Now, this really depends. Some of it, I'll be honest, depends on my own schedule. And I run things old school through a spreadsheet, but I also make myself notes. So it may be that I generally will give a publisher, if I know them, and they haven't responded within a certain number of weeks, I'll follow up with an email. And that might be 4 weeks down the line. If I'm worried that maybe they don't know me, I might email them again just to ensure that that initial email didn't go to spam. But look, all of us tend to be rather busy these days. And I know publishers are the same. They've got massive reading piles. They've got meetings all the time. Maybe they're getting prepped for the London Book Fair, the Frankfurt Book Fair, or something else. And look, it's always changing. The closer the relationship that I have with the editor, the more likely I am to know a little bit about what's on their plate because they share that with me. But otherwise, I will give them a generous amount of time to potentially respond to me. And then after about 4 weeks, I'll send a follow-up. If they've had it for a while, so that's a little bit different. If they have the full, I might give them a longer period of time to read it and then just check in and see, have they had a chance to read it yet, and try to get the follow-up that way. Nobody generally is trying to be rude or dismissive or forget about you, but things are just constantly changing. And so I know that in my own business and with publishers as well, they are just ever-changing priorities, and the reading pile is always getting restacked. And so it's a benefit for an agent, especially to reach out again. I would add time on to that if you are a writer directly approaching a publisher, and absolutely check their submission guidelines. Many publishers and or agents will give you really tight guidelines on whether or not they want to hear from you again within a certain period of time, or if they say something to the effect of, if you haven't heard from us within 6 to 8 weeks, expect that we are not interested in taking your query further. And you just have to respect that. It is not great to call somebody if they've asked for you to submit via email or a specific submission page that they have. So you're copying and pasting your query and or manuscript into that submission page. Take their instructions to heart and actually follow what they're asking. That's the best policy. Do agents hear back even if a publisher isn't interested? I would say yes, by and large. Not always. And again, this can happen either because they tell me immediately or I've done a follow-up. But it's not always the case. I mean, sometimes things get missed, and that's okay. We can generally build up a sort of relationship where we know, and as an agent, it doesn't stop me continuing to submit. So I'm never waiting generally to submit to someone else until I hear back, unless that's a very particular type of relationship and or I've actually said that they will get it on a non-simultaneous submission, meaning they know they're the only ones reading it at that time. And that's really rare these days because it can take so long to hear back. Does the agent follow up after so many days? I think I answered that. Any and all info on what happens would be wonderful. So hopefully that answers some questions. It's not comprehensive, but like I said, it really depends on the agent, and certain agents have a particular way that they do things. Some agents have massive lists and quite a few manuscripts that they're shopping at any given time. So it really depends on their workload as to whether or not they'll be able to give that specialized attention to every individual manuscript. They might also be reading, and when I say reading, I mean getting a sense of what the publishers are being more amenable to reading at the moment. And so they might hold on to it a bit. Now, hopefully your agent would be sharing that kind of communication with you. But I would say if you're not getting the response that you want from an agent that you have, try to approach that gracefully and graciously, and just ask if there's the possibility that they can get back to you in X amount of time, and just be really open and honest with what you are expecting. Hopefully you will have done that from the start, but I know that things change after a time. So the business is only ever as good as the communication we're having. That match with your agent and or a publisher is always based on relationships and whether you're getting what you expect and they're getting what they expect. So it really does benefit you to be as open and honest as possible. If you have any other questions about publishing or about the agent process, querying, or anything else, please don't hesitate to ask. You can put the question in the comments section of this particular video, or you can send me an email at anjanette@storyaslife.com. And until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.